Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Drop Jaw Flies fly tying tutorials. I've got a highly recommended tutorial for you today with the Min Pin streamer. This has been such a fun streamer to fish, especially in clear water where the trout are close to the bank and you want to target them, and this is the perfect streamer to do that with. It's small enough that you can cast in close proximity to the trout. It doesn't spook them, and when they see this, they generally just go up and eat it, which is what we want. So as far as what we'll need today, a rotary vise really helps for this pattern. The other thing is, obviously this is a small little head. It's only 3/8 of an inch in length. It's 1/4 of an inch tall and 1/4 of an inch wide. And so the hook that I use for this is a Gamakatsu S11S-4L2H. Perfect little hook. It's got a really small point, small fine wire, but it is very strong. We are able to jack the fish with these with 2X sometimes and really stick these in the fish's jaw, and they don't bend out. So perfect little hook for this. Of course, if you don't have this hook, any hook that you have that's probably an inch or just over an inch, it'll be fine. It'll work for it. So let's take this streamer out and get to work on this. Should only take you about 3 to 5 minutes once you get this down. Put our hook in. The thread that we're going to be using today is the 140 Ultra. I love this thread. It's what I use for most of my flies. It just got a little stretch to it, and I really like that. So we're going to get the thread on the hook and wrap this. We're going to wrap it over itself and actually make a few layers, and I'll explain why. When we tie the Min Pin streamer with the hook point up, we have to keel it with a weight to keep that hook riding right side up. And the weight has a slot in the bottom of it, and the slot is quite, I wouldn't say quite a bit, but it's bigger than the hook shank. And so if you don't build this shank up with thread, the weight will have a tendency to flop over when you're trying to seat it, and that's just a pain. So get enough weight, or get enough thread on your shank. Put just a little bit more right there in the middle. Next thing that you're going to do, that you should do when you're using these heads, is slide your head on and expose the whole eye, and that'll give you an idea of how much material that you can wrap with it without crowding it. If you put too much material on too close to the hook eye, you can't push these on and expose the eye of the hook to tie your tippet on, and that's just a pain. So just go ahead and slide that on. That'll give you a visual of where and how much material that you can add to the hook shank. So pull that back off. And the weights that we're going to use are these are supplied from Hareline. They're ribbed tungsten scud or shrimp bodies. And these are what we've used on all of our patterns. At least, it's coming up on 4.5 years now. But since we want the hook point to ride up in this particular pattern, I'm going to put this is actually the bottom of our hook, and I'm going to slide this from the eye of the hook, this edge about 3/8 of an inch. It almost, I mean, from your perspective, it probably looks like it's sitting right in the middle of that hook. So get that on really well, and we've got enough thread on our base that it's not sliding backwards or forwards or to the side. Just make sure it's lined up so that it's right dead center on the bottom. We don't have it tipping one way or the other. And get that on there. Next thing we're going to use is for a body is this holographic braid from Hareline, and this stuff has a great look in the water. Love it. It's a great little profile. Just go ahead, if you don't have this, use whatever you've got. I'm going to use about 8-9 inches of this. Tie it in just on the side of the weight and run it all the way back to about the barb of the hook, just so it's underneath the barb of the hook, and move your thread up to the front and just wrap this wrapping it around the weight can be kind of tricky because the weight is obviously sloped off on the ends. Your material, this braid, is going to want to slide off. Okay, build it up just a little bit, or wrap over itself just a little bit close to the eye of the hook, because we want to build that portion up just a little bit. And we'll tie it off. And the rest of this is done with synthetic fibers. And today we're going to be using some EP fibers in the original. This is in the polar color. Great little fiber for a little minnow. It's not stiff, and in the water it adds some really good action, and they're pretty translucent, so you can see the holographic braid through these fibers. It's really hard to tell also like how much or how thick, people call these hanks, but how much material I've pulled out. Pull out a small amount. This is not a lot. If you pull out too much and you can't see through the fibers, the holographic braid, you've definitely got too much. So overlap or overhang the edge of this, the bend of the hook, by about 3/4 of an inch. Let's tie that off right at the eye. And then you're going to grab this long end, and we're going to tie it, double it up, and tie it right over itself. And then snip that off, and I'm going to come from underneath. Okay, just like that. Add just a little bit more taper to it, if you're able to see that. And now I'm going to flip the fly, the whole thing over, and we're going to grab the same material, EP fibers, but just in golden olive. And you know, if you don't have this particular material, or if you just have a couple different colors, or even one color, you know, use what you've got. But we're going to take this olive, and I'm going to put it, I'm going to come in from my side and put it on. We'll tie that down. And then you take this over to the other side, about the same height, and tie that in. And you're going to cut this just a little bit longer than the white fibers. So you've got that down. And then you could stop right there, but I'm going to add one more material to this. And these are synthetic fibers from Jerkbait Mania, pike skins fibers. They're a light gray. This is the steel gray color. And these are quite a bit stiffer than the EP fibers. And the reason for that is because this hook, this fly, the hook rides point up, I want a stiffer fiber up here on top that's not going to move around a lot side to side and get jammed up behind that hook. So if I find that if I add some stiffer fibers up on top, it'll kind of trap these softer, wispier fibers underneath, and it won't allow them to get bound up behind that hook bend. So come in just like we did on the olive, right up on the side. Got a little bit of fibers that were trapped in that thread. Okay, so come up, tie them in, then grab this top side and move that around to the other side and tie those in. And of course we're going to cut these. We want these to be a little bit longer than our olive fibers. Put those back. And I always like to add a lateral line on the flies. It gives them a cool look, makes them look more real. And of course we're going for realism when we're tying with these heads. So on my side, I'm going to start by putting this right underneath the steel gray Jerkbait Mania fibers, in between that and the olive. Tie that in. And then work it around. And as you're working it around, just tie it down and seat it right in between the gray and the olive. Now you can leave those longer than all the fibers, or you can cut them shorter. You know, you decide. When you buy these tied, or when you buy them in the Min Pin tins, they're going to come just a little bit shorter than the rest of the fibers. So I'll just go ahead and trim that. Trim it on my side, and we'll tie this off. Basically, the fly is done for the most part. Hit that with the whip finisher. Snug it up. Cut it. And we're going to glue this on with the Liquid Fusion glue. This stuff is really nice to work with. It's not too caustic. It doesn't burn your eyes or your nose like some other glues. There's not much left in here, and so it takes a minute for it to get down. And we've already pre-measured our head, really, and the only thing that's left to do is to slide this head on, seat it, push it back, and expose that whole hook eye. And then what you want to do is make sure that it's not too far to the left or too far to the right, that it's just dead center. And then you can maneuver or manipulate your fibers and your lateral line, your crystal flash, whatever you have. And I'm going to make one. I'm going to taper this belly up just a little bit with the scissors. And what you end up with is a weighted, sleek little minnow profile with quite a bit of action. In the sun, you can see through it. You can see into the holographic braid, and it fools the fish. It's perfect for when the fish get skittish, when they spook easy, when they're close to the shore. Can't throw our huge flies at those particular fish. This turns out to be perfect. I'd throw this with a 5-weight. You can use a 4-weight, but anybody can cast this fly. My little 6-year-old has used this to catch fish with. So I encourage you to buy some of these heads. They're on the Drop Jaw Flies website. If you want custom colors, go ahead and place a custom order. You can get just about whatever you want. I'd like to thank you for watching this, and happy fishing, and remember, stick 'em solid.